the business, mashallah, starts to pick up. And the idea, it turns out to be $1 million idea. And so then he turns to the older brother and he says, I actually gave you this idea. And ideas are the key thing in business. Without an idea, you have nothing. So therefore, whatever profits you're making, I should actually get 25% of profits.
Using an excuse that, I have a need for this, or very easily saying that, there's a fatwa here, or there's this here, there's that here. The rampant society of zina. You see that there's how people are committing zina. And I'm not just talking about committing the highest form of zina. I'm talking about just all the forms of zina that people are doing. We see that this is a major problem in society today, that the spread of zina is so common. Where a brother actually asked me regarding that about an abortion case. He got to know this sister from America, and he's from England. He got to know this through social media. They got talking, they got quite into each other, and they got very emotionally attached to the extent that she came over. She took a flight, she came over, stayed a few nights, and obviously staying in a hotel, so he went over as well to see her, and then one thing led to another, and then she's gone back now and she's missed her period. Esther, she's pregnant now. They're asking, is that the first thing you want to ask me about? Like, are you going to ask me about, can I marry her or anything like that? It's like, no, I don't want to marry her though.
We have a solution in the Qur'an. Like all these things we've been discussing, they all have simple Qur'anic solutions. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to the second episode of the Social Dilemma podcast hosted by Imam Zakaria Academy. Now, the whole thesis and purpose of this entire podcast series, inshallah, is to present and prove to our listeners what every Muslim believes. And that is that Islam has the solution to society's problems. And these include modern problems that we are currently facing. And so inshallah, today's discussion is centered around this thesis. Inshallah, we're going to discuss a number of relevant, typical issues that people face and whether we can think of solutions that are grounded in the Qur'an and in the Sunnah. So with that, Mufti Sab, mashallah, you are very well respected in society, especially in our local community. People often come to you with questions, with issues they're facing. Even myself, I remember when I was a student, if I had something, I would come to you for advice. I remember before my marriage, I came to you for advice, alhamdulillah. So we're honored to have you. And in your experience with people coming to you, what are some of the typical issues that people are facing? If you could elaborate and maybe tell us how Islam guides your solutions that you then provide.
Yes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So yes, one obvious problem that comes to mind because of recently dealing with a problem like this is family problems, and especially to do with quarrels and fights that happen, mainly centered around money. Mm-hmm. So problems occurring because people haven't written things down properly. There wasn't proper understanding and agreement. So for example, there is two brothers, they open a business, or one in fact opens a business, and thinks that the other brother, he's not really doing much, he's not got a job at this moment in time. So without actually having an agreement properly, just says that, okay, come, are you gonna help me out of the business, kind of thing, right? So the other brother thinks, okay, so he thinks that's a partnership. So he's working, and especially because new business, so he's not really getting paid. The brother whose business it is, he thinks that my brother's just helping me out. He's not doing any work anyway at the moment, so it's fine. He's just helping me. I can't afford to pay him at this moment, so that's why I'm not paying him. So he just thinks that he's helping me, whereas the other brother thinks that I'm not getting paid, so that's why I'm actually a partner. So they are working, and the business starts to pick up, starts to flourish, and then after a little while, the brother's asking for like a stake in the business. So the other was like, what stake? Like, this is my business. I started this. And it obviously becomes messy. And the reason why is simply because you can see that they didn't set out things properly from the very beginning. So you see fights like this centered around money. So many other incidents come to mind that dealt with previously as well. Around this. Yeah.
I mean, the story you mentioned, I actually have a very, very similar story. And that kind of tells us that this is actually very typical. So I know a story of two brothers. And again, mashallah, these two brothers, they love each other. They have this brotherly bond. And you would think if you were to look at them, that they could never argue, they could never fight. Mashallah, nurtured very well by their parents. And so what happens is that one brother, and this is a true story, he suggests a business idea to his older brother. So the younger suggests a business idea to his older brother. And so the business, mashallah, starts to pick up. And the idea, it turns out to be $1 million idea. Not literally $1 million, but, making good money. And so the younger brother, he sees that. And initially he feels happy for his older brother. But as the older brother starts to make some money, shaitan starts to whisper in the younger brother's mind that that was your idea. If you had started that business, you could have made all that money. And so then he turns to the older brother and he says, I actually gave you this idea. And ideas are the key thing in business. Without an idea, you have nothing. So therefore, whatever profits you're making, I should actually get 25% of profits. And why? Because shaitan is whispering that I gave you this idea. And the brother, he turns around and he's shocked and he's heartbroken because he's thinking that, this money is coming between our relationship. And so it's so typical that two brothers, they would never think something like this would happen, and it happens. And so the question then obviously is that these things are typical. They happen in every family. So what could the solution be?
Yeah. I mean, just to share further incidents regarding what you just mentioned, it makes me remember a very similar incident, but between a husband and wife. So what happened was the husband was new to the country, the wife was also, and there were some friends that got together. They were going to buy some restaurant. They were going to buy a restaurant in partnership, 5 of them. And the husband was going to put a share in, but he didn't have enough money. So he was thinking, what should I do? The wife asked that what's wrong, something wrong. Said, oh yeah, we're buying a restaurant, but I don't have enough money. So she said, I've got the money. You can borrow my money. So, you can, I'll lend you my money like that. So he said, fine, no problem. So he took the money. And he went on this, venture of investing into restaurants. So he bought a restaurant like this. Slowly, the restaurant did well. He bought all the other partners out. He became the sole owner of that restaurant. From that, he multiplied, and he's an owner of 12 or so restaurants now. A lot of restaurant chains. Now, what happens? He passes away, and now the mother is claiming, the wife, in essence, is claiming that all of these businesses, they're actually mine. Because the initial money that I gave to your father, that was given by me. So therefore, everything he made thereafter, it all falls down to that initial money I gave. So I own a stake on everything. So it's all mine. So you see, this is the kind of things happen because there was no actual, like you said, there's no actual said agreement. And that's a very big problem amongst our people, right? Because we do things without actually setting things out properly, without having proper agreements in place. If you do that, what happens is, it spreads ill feeling amongst people, and then it just creates fights.
You know what it is? Like when I think about it now, it's like I think people don't do it because there's a level of shyness, and also there's a level of husnul dhan. And you also feel like, I could just imagine a brother saying to his brother that, oh, you're lending me money, or I'm lending you money, let's write it down. And the other's going to think, oh, so you don't trust me. And so out of that fear, sometimes we don't write things down. But I think what we need to understand is that, yeah, right now you're scared. And so for that reason, you might not write it down. But what if later on, it creates a dispute and a fight, and it gets so much worse? So you'd rather take that little bit of, anxiety and stress and just, be open about it. And say, this is what the Qur'an says, this is what our deen teaches, let's write it down, right? And so we have the ayah that يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا تَدَايَنْتُمْ بِدَيْنٍ إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ مُسَمًّى فَاكْتُبُوهُ. And this is actually the longest ayah in the Qur'an, right? And the Huffaz will know it's a very difficult ayah. And the longest ayah, and it's talking about that, oh, you who believe, when you contract a debt, which is for a stipulated time, then write it down. And it's something so simple. And it's something we really see in the West as well. Alhamdulillah, when we see something that is good, we praise it. And so in the West, like if I was to go to a shop, and purchase something, even milk for £1, Yeah, I mean, prices have all gone up, right? So £1.50 or £2, yeah, before somebody objects. But purchase milk, they'll give me a receipt as proof. You know, just today, we had bought some hummus. We bought some hummus. And the brand on the top corner, it said that heavenly or your money back. And so when I opened the hummus and we ate it, and because the advertising was so good, I actually bought 2 packets. And my wife was saying, we haven't tried it, don't buy another one. And I said, no, look how good it looks. Even the name was Holy Moly Hummus. So I was like, this must be good, right? And so if anybody is, gonna buy that hummus, I don't want to drop their stock value, but best to avoid it. Anyway, so I bought the hummus and I bought 2 because I got excited. And so my wife said, don't buy it. And I said, no, it says Holy Moly Hummus, heavenly or your money back. So might as well buy 2. And I bought it and I opened it and it tasted like paste. So I was a bit upset. And I bought this hummus, I waste money. I've got 1. How is going to eat the second one? Right? And so, but what I realized, and then I looked at the packaging, and on the back it said that if you don't like this, then you can go to this website and tell us what you don't like and have your money back. Right? And I can do that because I have a receipt. I have proof that I purchased this. And so that gave me this satisfaction, right? Having it written down for even something small like this brings so much benefit, right? So imagine bigger transactions like this. Definitely we should write them down.
100%. You know, this is so important. Like the guidance that's given to us by Allah Ta'ala in the Qur'an, obviously people take it lightly, but Allah Ta'ala is our creator. He knows how we are. So he knows our temperaments. And that's why he gives us advice in this manner that, write things down. And when you write things down, like you were mentioning, when things are written down, then the smallest of things are written down, but you've got that ability to be able to go challenge, take a refund, do things because it's written down. But if you don't have a receipt, you don't have it written, it leads to dissatisfaction from your side. It leads to a problem that creates between you and them. And many a times you hold a grudge that I'm never going to go to this business or this shop again or this people because they never looked after me. That you feel as though they didn't take your complaint seriously. So these kind of things happen. Just to give you an incident of my personal self as well, I'm very reluctant in giving money to borrow for people. Firstly, I don't have money excess to give money to people like that anyway. But once a friend of mine, he came to me and said, look, I need to buy a house, so I need X amount of money. And if you can lend me this much money, it was a little money, not too much. If you can lend me this much money, please. And it will only be for this much amount of time. And he told me exactly how much time he needs that money for. And he said that, I will give you, you will receive a solicitor's letter as well. And the money that you transfer to me will be a bank transfer. So you have proof as well. And I'll give you the solicitor's letter stating when I'll pay you back, how I'll pay you back and everything as well. So it gave me more confidence that actually, he's quite serious about it. He's going to write everything down properly. So that I said, okay. Now, believe it or not, before the time was up, he already paid me back. Yeah, he paid me back. He came back to me. He had sent me the solicitor letter and everything, beforehand. And now, when the time was nearly up, before the time, he had already transferred the money into my account. He told me that it's all done. Check it. I checked it. I confirmed it, and he made me so happy that if that friend was to come again to borrow money from me, even if I had a little, I would be confident that I can give. Why? Because it was written down. Everything was written properly. He stuck by. Now, I'm not promoting people to give money out to people because, when you give money to people, sometimes, a lot of times, the money doesn't come back. Just another incident, it comes to mind that there was a friend of mine, in fact, he gave money to somebody to borrow and he kept asking him, because he wasn't too well off, but he gave money because the person was in need. So anyway, he kept going to that person that you promised that you'll pay me back in this much time. It's not come back yet. He said, yeah, I'll pay you. Kept saying that. After a little while, leaves him. A few weeks later, he asks him again, you're going to pay me or not? And kept doing this. Eventually, it got to a stage where the person that he owed the money, he got so annoyed. He got annoyed, in fact, yeah, saying that, well, if you wanted the money back, why did you give it to me?
Subhanallah.
Yeah. So that made him realize, this is what he said to me. This is why I share this with you. That he said, he goes, that I realize now that people, when they ask for money, they're not expecting you to pay back. So I think because of the closeness of relationship like that, sometimes, like if you were to give money to your father or your brother or somebody like that, you're not expecting that they're going to give it back. I mean, you should do, obviously, you should give it back. But, sometimes you have to be careful as to how you give the money, because sometimes people are not going to give that money back.
Yeah, and I mean, this reminds me of the hadith, well-known hadith, مَطْلُ الْغَنِيِّ ظُلْمٌ, that the delaying of the rich person is a type of oppression. Because if you've borrowed money from someone, they've done you a favor, then the least you can do is when you have that money, reciprocate, give the money back, right? So that's there as well. And I think also in the West and globally as well, they've created, I think, what is a debt culture, where people are encouraged to take debts. Like if you pay via credit card, for example, you will get points, you will get cash back. So you have a debit card which has money, and yet they're saying that no, pay via credit card, right? Pay via credit card. And subhanAllah, I myself don't have a credit card, and many times people have told me that for your credit score, you should get a credit card. I remember many years back, one of my distant family members, he even said, get a credit card. But I was always like, no, it's interest, and I don't want and my mum is very like, well, we have to stay as far away from interest as possible. Like, we don't even want to get close, because what if you take money out and then you forget to repay it? Like something as small as that. And interest is something that Allah has declared war against. And so I didn't have a credit card. And on one occasion, we went on a family trip, a holiday to Spain, right? And Spain is one of the most beautiful countries. How I wish, it was still a Muslim land. But I remember we went to rent a car, and I didn't have a credit card. And so every place we went to, they said, oh, we can't give you a car because you don't have a credit card. And eventually, after like walking from one company to another, finally I arrived at one company, and they said, well, we'll let you off, but you can rent a car, but we've got this car which is like £1,000 for the week. Take it or leave it. And I had to take it, right? But you see how it's so normal to have a credit card. When you don't have it, you feel punished, right? And so we have this debt culture. And I think as Muslims, we have to be aware that we don't want to sink into this debt culture. Islam teaches us that, and even our cultures generally say that, you only spread your blanket as far as your feet goes. What money you have, that's what you spend. And it comes back to me, one of our teachers early years, subhanAllah, he said to me that one of the biggest things he regrets was taking out so much money. He goes, taking money is easy, paying back is hard. And that's what Islam teaches us, that, spend what you have and don't take unnecessary debts. So this is the beauty of Islam, and it opens our eyes up to many things that are so normal, in our societies. And connected to that point also is just to clarify to the listeners, we're not just saying when you take debts, but also partnerships, for example, dealings, all these things where you think that this could go down the wrong path. Yeah, don't be naive. Rather be safe than sorry, and write these things down in black and white. Have them clear. Have witnesses if you wish, right? But this will, inshallah, this Islamic etiquette, advice, regulation will really save so many problems, going down the line. So that's, one problem. Can you think of maybe another problem, again, that's common in society?
I mean, another thing that what we're talking about, linked to what we're talking about, is how commonly people are dealing in interest, and how easy it is for people just to take out, products that banks offer or financial organizations offer that are to do with interest, that are interest-based. And people are just, very willingly or very neglectfully just taking on those products and using an excuse that, I have a need for this, or, very easily saying that, there's a fatwa here, or there's this here, there's that here. And just very easy in dealing in interest.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the thing is, a lot of people don't actually realize the harm of interest. And I think if we could elaborate on that a little bit, and why interest, Islam has even prohibited interest. But, when we studied fiqh, we studied a principle, a maxim, which says, al-kharaju bil-daman, that any profit you get must come with a liability. It's only when you have a share in that liability do you deserve that profit. Because otherwise what happens is, if you are earning without any liability, without any risk, which is essentially what interest is, right? That you're lending money and you're going to get that money back plus some excess. So you're getting more back without any liability, essentially. And so what that does is it leads to wealth inequality. Because over time, the person who is dealing in interest is going to hoard more and more and more of the money. And that's why, there's an article which I recently came across, and came across this many, many years ago, that now we had passed a stage where 1% of the population of the world has more than 50% of the wealth. We cry about, we feel sad for all those places where people don't have food on the table. People don't have clean running water. Disease is spreading. But the problem is that 1% is hoarding all the wealth and the others are suffering, right? So Islam is saying that don't take interest and don't do dealings where the risk is unfair. Profit should come with risk. And again, this is the wisdom of Islam, right? But I think what would also be interesting to share is why, apart from this, are there any other reasons why Islam has, prohibited interest?
So yeah, I mean, the simple understanding of what you're saying, just to elaborate on what you're saying in a very simple way, so everyone can understand for the interest of those people. I'm going to simplify one great wisdom as to why Allah Ta'ala mentions regarding interest in a very dangerous way, in terms of like you said before, that it's like waging war with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in dealing in interest in these ways. So in a very simple way, if we can understand like what money actually is, the point is that when we deal with interest, and interest becomes the goal, you want to make money make money. That's what interest is about. Your money is making your money, and it's seen as though it's clever business. Yeah, somebody's really clever because they're sitting back and they're allowing their money to make money for them. So this is actually not the Islamic system, because when you do that, what happens is you're in essence, like you said, you're taking money for not offering any services to the people, and money becomes the goal. It becomes the actual thing to have now. Whereas money was always that initially, if you go back to the ancient times, before, when money wasn't even around, when money was initially created, money was created as a facilitator. It was something which facilitates you to be able to trade, to be able to take services from people. So let's just take an example, right? So let's say there's a village of 10 people, for example, 10 families, right? So you've got this tribe, 10 people, one person amongst them's a carpenter, one person from amongst them's a farmer, one person from amongst them is a butcher, one person from amongst them, like this. They have different services that they offer to the people. So one's a medic, things like this, right? Now what happens is, when, for example, you need milk. So you're going to go to the person who has the sheep, the cow, whatever it is that's going to give them milk. You're going to go to the person, the milkman, yes? You're going to go to the milkman and you're going to go get milk. But now how are you going to pay him for the milk? So, for example, I'm going to have some chickens, and they give me eggs. So I'm going to take a few eggs. I'm going to give him a few eggs, and he's going to give me some milk in return. So like this, they used to barter, product for product like this. So the farmer would have some whatever rice, wheat, whatever it is you wanted that. I would have to take my eggs and I'll barter him in this manner. But now obviously it'd come a time when some people, their services, like a carpenter or somebody whose services are not needed daily, would not be able to do that on a daily basis, because how are they going to give their services for some milk or for some eggs and things like that? So then we created a medium in between, and that was in essence gold and silver and things, right? So then slowly these nuggets of gold, because you have to constantly weigh them, they become formed into coins and eventually form money. So when you have money, so let's say in our society now of these 10 people, we've created money amongst us, a currency, to be able to facilitate us to gain those services that we wanted. So what we do is we create, for example, 20 coins, and we give 2 to each person. We say, here you go, these are 2 coins for everyone, shared equally. You use these coins to facilitate for you to be able to. So you use the coin, you go to the milkman and you're going to buy milk for a coin, for example. But if you want more milk the next day, you're going to need more coins. So you're going to have to give service to the community to be able to earn coins as well. So then you're able to spend your coins. So you're going to give back to the community by giving service, or by giving whatever it is that you're giving to the community, contributing community. And by you contributing to the community, you're going to gain so that you're going to be able to spend. Now, what happens from amongst these 10 people? One clever person, in inverted commas. So you got this clever person. What does he do? He decides that, you know what, I'm going to make my money do the work. So what does he say? That I've got my 2 coins still. I've not used them, but that person's got no coins left. So I'm going to go to him. I'm going to tell him that, look, I'll give you a coin. I'll lend you my coin. But when you gain, you have to give me 2 coins back. So the other person, he has a need, right? He sees his children are crying for that milk. He needs to get it. So he's reluctantly, he says, okay, I've got no choice. I need that coin right now to pay the milkman. So, okay, I'm going to have to take it off you and give 2 back to you. I'm going to have to work extra hard. So he does that, takes the coin. Now what happens? This person now, without giving back to community, he didn't give anything. He just let somebody borrow his money. But that wasn't a service that he had given to the community through way of, contributing to community. So what he did was, now he has gained 3 coins. Now he's got an extra coin because that person's paying him double. So now what happened? One of the people don't have the 2 coins anymore, right? It's disproportionate. The share is not equal. Now, because he's got 3, he's more powerful than the others. So now he's able to he says, okay, I got 2 extra coins. I'm going to give him and him a loan now, right? So he starts giving out more and more loans like this. And slowly, he gains much more of that pot. So you see now what happens, he becomes much more powerful, much more, he's gaining more. For what? For not really giving any service back to the community, not contributing to the community, but taking advantage of their need. So by this, what happens? The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And like this is how you're saying that it becomes disproportionate. So it's a great hikmah. It corrupts the fabric of society, that the way that the system of interest works. And this is the reason why in the Qur'an, it really discourages completely against it.
And I think what you said kind of is encapsulated in the ayah where Allah says, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْءَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى, that Allah has made bayt halal, trade, transaction, business. Allah has made that halal, but He has made riba haram. And so many people, they look at it and think, well, one second, the end outcome is the same. But in Islam, we don't just focus on the ends to the detriment of the means. No, the means are important. How are you getting to those ends? Those are just as important as the ends many times, right? And so we have to understand that it looks the same, but the process is completely different. And one is bringing benefit to society, people are providing a service for which they're earning, and one is causing harm to society. And there's a big difference.
So exactly that point that you was mentioning, that one person actually came to me once saying that, oh yeah, if you hold it here this side, you hold it from this side, it's all the same. Yeah. Like you're saying. And they say these kind of comments, like acting like the dealing in trade. And he was like, oh, you people, you have to come up with something nowadays. You muftis, basically. He said, you have to come up with something nowadays. We're in this modern society and interest is everywhere. How can you disallow interest? Like you have to do something. And it's like, you're telling us to change the Qur'an? You're telling us to go against a ruling that Allah has emphatically mentioned in the Qur'an. You know what you're doing, right? So like you're saying, so I had to explain to him. He said it's the same thing, it's this and the rest of that, like same thing. I said, okay, look, I want new shoes. I want new shoes, right? So now I can gain the new shoes how? So he says to go to the shop and buy it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can get new shoes like that as well. But I said that I can also get new shoes by what? I go on Eid day, I go to the masjid, I stand at the shoe racks, and I pick any shoe I want. I've got new shoes. So I've got new shoes. The end outcome is the same. So I said, I got new shoes here and I got new shoes here. Is it both the same? He said, no, that's not the same, innit? You stole. I said, exactly the same. You've done something. You've gained that money that you've gained through haram. It is haram. Right? We understand that stealing is haram. Dealing in interest is haram. So you've gained that money through haram. So it's not the same as gaining the money through business, like we were saying.
Yeah. And I think also, you mentioned where he said that interest is so common. But the reality is that there's a hadith in Abu Dawood when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he warns us. And the hadith says that a time will surely come upon the people in which no one will remain but that he consumes interest. If he does not consume it, he will be afflicted by its dust. Now what's interesting is Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam didn't say, so therefore, because it's so common, you can take it. No, he still maintained the prohibition. So he knew this time was going to come, but he still told us that anybody who is involved in interest, someone who consumes, someone who facilitates, someone who is part of the process, they are all going to be sinful. And so I think as a community, we have to make sure we don't become desensitized to it. We have to understand the gravity of interest, the corruption it causes, and we have to be a community that provides the world an alternative. And I think this is what it is. Islam is an alternative to the Western system. Where the Western system is failing, Islam is that alternative. If we as Muslims start to copy the West, there's no alternative left. So we have to work towards the alternative. We have to support the alternative. Even, many people, they come to me and they say, typically when it comes to home financing, that when you go and get a home finance product from a conventional bank, compared to you go to an Islamic bank, the Islamic bank sometimes is 20-30% more expensive. When you add that up over, 20-30 years, that's a large sum of money. So they say, well, at the end of the day, I'm getting a house, and this is 20-30% more expensive. These guys are ripping me off. They're ripping me off. So I'll just go with a conventional bank. And I have to explain to these people that, yes, you're right. One is interest. One is Islamic, right? And yes, you are paying 20-30% extra. But that is a sacrifice you're making. And I would go to the extent of saying that rather than you get this cheaper house product and save £100,000, for example, and then give that £100,000 in sadaqah, better than that is you pay this extra 100,000 to the Islamic bank and, buy a house. That would be better for you. So people have to have the understanding that this is what our deen wants. This is what we have to do, right? And this kind of connects to something I've been, mentioning quite strongly to a lot of the students recently as well. That this concept of sacrifice, us being willing to sacrifice for the sake of our deen. Yes, it's going to cost you more, right? When you buy that house through the Islamic bank, through a bank that is truly ethical, properly Islamic, it's going to cost you more. But that's a sacrifice you're making for the coming generation. That's an investment you're making to support this alternative that will help so many people. And recently everybody will know that on the news we've had a lot of praise for these young students who've been on their campuses and they've created encampments on the campus lawns, right? And they're saying we are not going to move from here until our universities divest from Israel and until our universities put out statements against this genocide. And they've put a number of demands. And subhanAllah, what impresses me so much is that so many of these young men and women are non-Muslims, yet they are willing to sacrifice their careers, their futures, their reputations. All this effort they've put in, they're willing to sacrifice it for these people who are thousands of miles away. That's a sacrifice they're willing to make. So we as Muslims also have to be people who are willing to make this sacrifice, right? And so this means that when, for example, it comes to a student loan and you think, oh, you know what, everybody's taking it. It's interest, but you can't escape it. You have to be willing to say, no, I'm going to sacrifice a year, delay a year, work for a year, but I won't get interest. I won't take interest. And subhanAllah, just last week, one of the students in the madrasa, he bought mitais. And I was thinking, what's this mitai for? I ate it anyway, right? Because you don't have to order, you eat. So I ate it. But then he came and he said, oh, Maulana, this mitai is actually because today I paid off my last installation for my university and I didn't take any interest. And I honestly felt amazed that this is what our ilm is being for. This is what our ilm is for. It's not just some theoretical knowledge. His ilm has turned into action. And that action has led him to make this huge sacrifice. That he's working summer months, he's working part-time, he's working weekends, but he's going to please Allah. And this is, if we make this sacrifice, that's the only way we can set up this alternative.
That's right. Now, in regards to, the, what we're saying, the so-called halal alternatives, you can say, in purchasing a home or something like that, right? We're not endorsing any particular organization saying that these are halal entirely products. Obviously, there are certain products that are offered out there that are somewhat questionable. Some scholars have certain problems with some of the conditions that are in these contracts and things like this. But there are organizations out there that are, mashallah, trying their best and they are working towards a lot of satisfying all of these conditions and offering a very halal package for people out there. So there are many organizations you can get in touch with. That's if you want to go down the route of like buying a house. But I really want to point out that people need to really rethink And is the benchmark of success owning a home? Because we're really, really pushed in the West, whereby we're told that are you a homeowner? Are you a homeowner? Constantly that question is being asked, that are you a homeowner? It makes it that, oh no, I'm not a homeowner. I should be owning a home, isn't it? So I should be, right? It makes us, look forward to, like, I need to buy a home. I need to actually own a home. That this is something I need to leave behind for my children. No, you don't need to. There are many people out there that have lived successful lives and they don't own a home. At the end of the day, think about it, all right? I'm not saying necessarily everyone don't own a home, but I'm just saying, just think about it. If it's not within your means to buy a home, then don't go out your way, pay 25, 30 years of a debt that you're going to now incur, which you don't even know you're going to live till then, to be at the end of it, you're going to be left with what? You're going to be left with bricks and mortar. You're going to be left with a home. That's it. That's all you're going to be left with.
You know what's really interesting? It's like sometimes the things that we do, we don't really think them through. And it's because they've become such a norm in society. Yeah. So let me give you an example. Just a few days ago, I was talking with one of my friends, close friends, and we were mentioning about going to university. We were talking with a student and, talking about him going to university or perhaps taking doing an apprenticeship. And we were just saying like how much more sense it makes to do a degree apprenticeship compared to going to university in many instances. Why? Because when you go to university, for many people, they're taking a loan of £20,000, £30,000, number one. Then you've got to pay for your living costs if you're moving out. Oftentimes, a lot of people are actually disappointed by what they learn because it's not very practical. It's a lot of theory. Along with that, so many people who've gone to university will say that out of 100% of what I've learned, I probably use 1 or 2% in my career, in my job. The other 98% is just forgotten, right? And so that's 3 years you've spent studying where 98% you're not using. You've got into debt for that. Then sometimes you apply for a job, and because the degree you've done, unfortunately, doesn't have a lot of value, you can't even get a job. But despite that, people in their hordes are going to university. Why? Because it's the norm. And and I myself, alhamdulillah, went to university. But when I actually thought about it in this way, I started to question my decision. I was like, wow, when you put it down on paper like that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think the same thing when it comes to these houses. Like, when you think about the fact that you are going to take a loan from a bank for 25 or 30 years, that's 25 or 30 years where you are regularly paying interest. Imagine the anger of Allah that you are earning. And that's 25 or 30 years where constantly you are under debt. You are under stress. Because when you're under debt, you're under stress. You can't live in peace because you're worried about the next bill you got to pay. That if I don't pay, they might repossess my house. If I don't pay, they might... That's a stress that you're living in. So when we think about it like that, it really, we should really start to change our perspectives, or at least think that, is this the right decision?
Definitely, yeah. So many people, like you're saying, have to live like very restrictive, stringent lives just because they have to, at the end of it, have a house. I mean, why do that? Why spend so much money in earning a house where you could have used that money to live life better?
SubhanAllah, exactly. And it's not just Muslims. Even in the West, like there's so many people, they reach their 60s and 70s and they say that, once again, I spent 20, 30, 40 years putting all my money into this house, and now I'm on my deathbed and I've not lived my life. I've not lived my life. And they're starting to think that, was this really the wise thing to do? Yeah? And I think we just want to clarify, we're not saying don't buy a house. Of course, if it's within your means and this is something you want to do, of course you can. But just don't do it in a way that displeases Allah, because there's nothing more valuable than that. Yeah, Allah's pleasure, that's the most important thing. وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ.
That's right.
Right.
So now, just to summarize, this particular problem that we have in society is mainly to do with interest. So, like you said, student loans, credit cards, that we talked about, mortgages, business loans. Everyone's taking out business loans, and you go to a businessman, it's like they're saying, business amongst businessmen is such a common thing that why are you gonna? So we're gonna do a business, and why are you gonna do business with your money for? No, don't do business with your money. Borrow money from the bank. Do business with the bank's money. It's like for some people it was like unheard of. That why would you use your own money? No, use the bank's money. But why? Why use the bank's money? I'm gonna incur interest on that loan that I'm gonna take from the bank. I want to use my own money. No, you're putting your money at risk. You have to keep your money. You have to use the bank's money because they're going to give you money for a loan. It's like unheard of for them that you would use in your business your own money.
Yeah.
So these are things like it's becoming so common that we become desensitized and we don't even consider, like think twice. We don't even twitch regarding that this is going to be, incurring interest.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like we have to realize these banks are not silly. The amount that you think that you're making, they're making 10 times that from you, or from that loan they're giving you. Like how many times I've seen a letter come to my parents' house and it's like, do you want a business loan? And then it's like 39% APR. And you're thinking, that's crazy. Like, how am I going to pay that? But it's literally, they're posting it in your house and they're forcing it down your throats. Like, it's so easy. But you can take that loan, but what if you can't repay it? So, I mean, and again, this is why Islam is so powerful and it gives us this guidance and it opens our eyes to these realities, right? Now, another practice or another problem in society is when we see people doing things wrong and we don't speak up about it. And this leads to a decline in the general piety and the general righteousness in society. And I think what this kind of comes down to is the fact that the West is a very individualistic society. Islam tries to balance the rights of the individual with the rights of the community. But in the West, the individual is king. What the individual wants, he can do. As long as it makes you happy, you do that. As long as you're not harming somebody else, which is what they call the harm principle. As long as you're not harming somebody else, you can do what you want, right? And this causes a lot of problems. So perhaps maybe this would be, a worthy point of discussion, and especially how Islam deals with this. So what is the Islamic solution to this problem of individualism and to this general decline that we're facing in society?
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind is in the Qur'an, Allah Ta'ala mentions in so many places of commanding of good and forbidding the evil. So when societally people are doing something which is like you're saying on the decline, society is on the decline, they're doing so many things that are wrong, then you need to prohibit people from that wrong. And we need to encourage people to do good, right? We need to encourage that. And because people aren't doing this, it leads to this society where people are able to then freely do what they want to do because nobody's there to prohibit them. Nobody's there to, in essence, police them. Nobody's there to guide them. Nobody's there to try to change their mind about certain things. So this is very important. Like we understand this ruling of the Qur'an where we amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar, we call, right? And because we see as time goes along, people are slowly moving away from this, and less people are actually, prohibiting from the evil and commanding people to do the good. Whereas this is actually a fardul kifaya when you're in a group, when you see that you're in a group and you see something wrong happening, and you have the capability to advise this person to prevent them from doing that wrong, and you don't do it, none of you do it in that group, then every single person in that group is sinful.
Yeah, and the example that comes to mind that I think, and a lot of teachers will relate to this, is that nowadays teachers actually feel scared to even discipline their own students. They feel scared to discipline their own students. Why? Because when this happens, there are instances, for example, where the teacher, he's telling the parent that your child, he's done this and this wrong. And the parent knows that what my child has done is wrong, but the parent will unfairly defend the child, right? And the parent thinks that, oh, how dare you tell my child? Who are you to tell my child? And so this is the mentality that parents have developed. And so we need to change from this mentality that if somebody criticizes me, then we feel like our ego is being attacked. And we have to switch to a mentality of humility, where true friends are those people who they don't support us in wrong, but rather they guide us to that which is right. When they see us doing something wrong, then they tell us, look, this is wrong. Right? And that's why Allah says that al-akhillau yawma'idhin ba'duhum li ba'din aduwwun illa al-muttaqin. That the akhilla, those who are really close friends, on Yawmul Qiyamah, they're going to be enemies, except those who had taqwa. Why? Because if you have taqwa, you're going to remember Allah is watching me. And that's why I need to tell my friend that, look, bro, this is what you're doing is wrong. Right? So we need to be a society of amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar.
Yeah, definitely. So, how in the Qur'an, in various places, Allah Ta'ala tells us about the people of the past and it tells us about how the people of the past and why they were destroyed. And in what Allah Ta'ala mentions it different ways. But if we take one verse, for example, Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ لِيُهْلِكَ الْقُرَى بِظُلْمٍ وَأَهْلُهَا مُصْلِحُونَ. That Allah Ta'ala is not going to destroy a nation whilst its people are rectifying one another, are enjoining one another in doing the good, and making sure that they're forbidding from the evil. The people are not doing that evil. So they're doing islah. They are actually rectifying one another. So a community is not destroyed because of that. But that then means that a community is destroyed, like Allah Ta'ala shows in various different places where Allah Ta'ala destroyed some of Banu Israel, for example, and Allah Ta'ala talks about them, that these people were such that كَانُوا لَا يَتَنَاهَوْنَ عَنْ مُنْكَرٍ فَعَلُوهُ, that they never used to prohibit people from the evil that they used to do. So because they were involved in that evil themselves, they were thinking that we can't prohibit people. And some people are thinking like this. But no, it's not like that. Even if you are involved in that evil, you're meant to still prohibit other people from that. Why? In the hope that you first, because you're listening to yourself first, so you will feel bad that I'm telling this person, but I'm doing this myself. I should stop.
I think, don't quote me on this, but I think I recall it was Maulana Tanwi who said about himself that often he used to give bayans and lectures on certain topics where he felt himself was weak. Because through that, he hoped that would rectify. Because, sometimes you're telling somebody else and you're weak at that. Then you'll feel guilty that I'm telling him and I'm weak at this. And so maybe through that, Allah will give you that tawfiq that inshallah you'll change your ways. And so the point here is that whether small or big, we should command the good and prohibit the evil. How many times, for example, our own cases where we're praying next to somebody and we've seen them do something wrong in salah. And we're like, oh, well, shall I tell him? Or he might become a bit upset. You know what, just leave it. And you don't tell him. And his salah is either maybe not valid or he's been doing this wrong for years, obviously. And he's doing it, right? So, like typical people have prayed, for example, they've prayed 1 rak'ah and they got 3 rak'ahs to go. That's typical. And so what you're supposed to do, you get up for 1 rak'ah, you now sit in your tashahhud, and then you pray 2 more rak'ahs. But a lot of people, they don't know that. So they get up for 3, they're praying 3, they'll pray 2 together, then they'll sit in tashahhud, because that's, you're used to praying 2s. And you see, and so many times you see it, and you can tell this guy's just got up, right? He should have sat here. And you don't like, oh, you know what? He might react in the wrong way. He might think, who are you to tell me? So you don't say anything. And so I think it works both ways. That when we command the good, prohibit evil, we do it with wisdom, right? أُدْعُوا إِلَى سَبِيلِ رَبِّكَ بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ. And on the flip side, if somebody is telling you that, this is what you should be doing or don't do this, we don't see it as an attack on us. We see it as an advice, as guidance, as somebody who is a well-wisher for us. And as the hadith says, ad-deenu nasiha. The deen is nasiha, well-wishing. So this person is my well-wisher, and that's how I should, take his advice. Now, obviously we've mentioned this, but is there maybe a very, very practical way that we can give to people where they can implement this Quranic advice and see that growth in spirituality and piety?
Yeah, definitely. Because this is our purpose, to try to come up with practical solutions for these problems that we're talking about, not just lip service. We're not just talking about these things, right? So I would say make a small group amongst your either family members or your friend circle, and make an agreement. Make an agreement amongst yourselves that, okay, look, if we are, any of us, if we do something wrong, then one of us have to correct. One of us are going to say it in a nice way, but one of us are going to say it. And when that person says it to us because we did that wrong, we cannot react in a negative way towards that person. We have to take it on as advice. This person is my well-wisher. This person wants good for me, and that's why they're telling me what they're telling me. So if we have this kind of understanding amongst ourselves, a small circle of people, what happens is we will create this environment in our household, in our friend circle. Slowly, inshallah, this will spread. More people, you bring more people into it. And like that, you will start gaining confidence as well, that you are able to tell people. We see many a times, we see the Arab brothers, mashallah, they're very confident in this.
Yeah.
So they will not shy away from telling you when you're doing something wrong, or when they feel as though you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, that happened to me. So once I was delivering a tafsir lesson in the masjid, and I was saying that, there's a certain ayah, and I remember I said that here Allah is trying to say. And then, I gave the rest of the talk and whatever, and alhamdulillah, it was all well. And then after, this brother approached me, And he said that, oh, you said Allah is trying to say. Allah doesn't try. This word try, this word here is not befitting for Allah. And I mean, when you think about it, it's such a small thing. Somebody might even say he's being petty, he's being pedantic. Like, come on, he's just nitpicking. But really, for me, I thought, subhanAllah, you're right. This word trying, that's not befitting for Allah. I'm diminishing Allah's status, right? And so, alhamdulillah, I saw it in that positive light. And because I saw it like that, he regularly, when I make a mistake, he regularly comes to me and he says, oh, brother, you said this, or why did you say this? And then sometimes I explain, my point of view or whatever else. But it keeps me on my toes. And he sees it as a positive thing, that this guy is not going to get hurt. He's going to learn. He's going to improve. He might respond in the right way. And so it's a learning opportunity there. So definitely they have this, and this is something we want to bring, in our communities. But on the flip side, you do get some people, who are overly zealous, and they do it in the wrong way. And they do it where they name call and they diminish people and they attack people's character. And so, we're told that hate the sinner, hate the sin, not the sinner. Hate the sin, not the sinner, right? So if you see somebody doing something wrong, it doesn't give you right now to, publicly lambast them and attack them and start speaking bad things about them. The first step should always be, in this age, even of social media, always in private, that, you did this. Is there a reason behind this? And that's why the fuqaha, mashallah, they had so much insight. They said, look, when there's something, a matter of ikhtilaf, and mujtahad fi matter, then you don't do nahi anil munkar, because there's another view, maybe he's adopting that view. So if you see a Shafi'i doing raf'ul yadayn, you're not going to say this is a munkar, stop doing this, right? So I think that understanding is also important, that those matters which are clear, which we know is haram, yes, we do nahi, but we do it in a wise way. And the way we do it reflects our intention. If you're doing it in this soft way, in a way that will actually make the person change, then that's a point for you that, yeah, my intention is right. But if you're doing it in a way where you're dishonoring them, then you need to think that, am I doing it for Allah, or am I doing it for my own ego boost to show I'm better than you? Then it defeats the point, right? It defeats the point. So that's another one. There are so many problems in modern society. We could go on and on and on. And time is obviously limited. So if we can just discuss maybe a few more, but keep it brief, inshallah.
Yeah.
So what else comes to your mind in terms of typical problems?
I think one obvious one that needs to be talked about is the rampant society of zina. You see that there's how people are committing zina, and I'm not just talking about committing the highest form of zina. I'm talking about just all the forms of zina that people are doing, and having a relationship with somebody, talking on the phone. It's just so normal nowadays. It's so normal that people think that it's all part of society. It's all good. There's various reasons as to why it gets to that stage, right? And there's so many things that we can come up with as solutions for this. But we see that this is a major problem in society today, that the spread of zina is so common. Now, just to share with you, just very recently, just a few days ago, where a brother actually asked me regarding that about an abortion case. And I'm like, okay, what's the issue here? What's happened? So he's like, he got to know this sister from America, and he's from England. He got to know this through social media. They got talking, they got quite into each other, and they got very emotionally attached to the extent that she came over. She took a flight, she came over, stayed a few nights, and obviously staying in a hotel, so he went over as well to see her, and then one thing led to another, and then she's gone back now, and she's missed her period. So now obviously she's taken a pregnancy test and she's pregnant. Now they're asking, so now the point I'm trying to make is that, okay, why are you asking about abortion? Like, is that the first thing you want to ask me about? Like, aren't you going to ask me about, can I marry her or anything like that? It's like, no, I don't want to marry her though. I don't want to marry her. I wish our sisters would understand this point as well. That these people, these men out there, many of them are just in it for what? They're just in it for that one night stand. They just want to, that's all they're in it for. They just want to use her. And I'm afraid, unfortunately, many sisters don't understand this. That's all he's in it for. But besides the point, side point, the main thing here is that it's so common. This is how common it's becoming because of how easily available this is.
Yeah, and obviously the point here is we have a solution in the Qur'an. Like all these things we've been discussing, they all have simple Qur'anic solutions. The West, they philosophize, they analyze, they have people do PhDs on these topics. And we have in the Qur'an one ayat here, one ayat there, and it's like just summarizes the whole thing. And so Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la taqrabu zina. That don't approach zina. So straight away Allah is telling us that there are steps, there are khutuwatu shaitan, steps of shaitan which lead you to zina. So make sure you don't start on that journey because it's a slippery slope downwards, right? As you mentioned. And I mean, this was zina, but if not zina, then people get into secret marriages. You know, our work with the MFF, we had a case where a brother approached me and he said that, basically my younger brother, it turns out he's had a secret marriage. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I know this person, and I think I was shocked. Like, you seem like a good family. How could that happen? And long story short, essentially it turned out that this young man, he'd actually told his own family that, I like this girl and I'd like to get married. And they said, no, not now. 3, 4, 5 years, finish your studies. You're not mature yet. You've got a long way to go. Do all these things and then inshallah, we'll consider it. And so now imagine telling a young man who's hormonal, who's ready to go, he's got all the energy in the world, right? And you're saying 4 or 5 years. He's thinking like, that's like in the next life, that's in the akhirah basically. That's what's that for him. So of course, what else is he going to do? And so at least he had the decency to think that, I can't do zina. And so somebody, a revert, told them that, look, you can't do zina, with a good intention, that, look, you can't do zina, so get a secret marriage. And so they got some friends and they did a secret marriage basically. And then later the parents come and say, oh, they've done a secret marriage, help us, what should we do? And they're really distraught. Right? So these things happen. And so the Qur'an gives us the solutions that we as people must stay away from zina, from those things which lead to zina. And that starts, for example, with lowering your gaze. Allah says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغُضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ. So the first step, Allah is saying, don't look. Keep your gaze low. When it comes to marriage, the hadith tells us that when you are ready to marry, then get them married off. When the youth are ready, then get them married off. So these are all solutions that we have that we must implement. We must bring into, our societies.
And as we're talking about making this a very realistic, because this one's going to be really difficult for people, yes?
Yeah, of course.
And especially for the youngsters out there, they're going to be thinking that, how do we do this though? You're telling me lower my gaze, but how am I going to do that? So we're going to try to make it as practical as we can, right? So you have to try your best to practice lowering the gaze, practice on focusing on a spot, right? So like practice in salat is a very good way of practicing this, because in salat we're told to look at certain points, certain positions. So if you focus in your salat and you are making sure you're looking at the right points without being distracted here and there, the eyes are rolling there, quickly rolling there and looking back, not like that. Focus, really focus, and then what will happen? It will train you in life how to be focused as well, because you're following the command of Allah Ta'ala here. So outside in life, when you're walking the street, you will be able to follow command of Allah. When Allah is saying look down, right? And main thing is also in a practical way, what I say to people is that, when you look, if you try to look, if I look, for example, now in the middle of the room, I'm looking focused at the middle of the room. I'm looking down. I'm looking at the middle of the room, but I can see everything through peripheral view. I can see the whole room. I can see the entire room. And you'll be able to do that. You can judge that yourselves as well. Look and you see the entire room. So now if you look whilst you're walking the street quite ahead, even though you're looking down, you'll be able to see everything. Then you're going to get distracted. So the idea is don't look so far away from you. Look quite down. Not to say that you're looking with your head down and you're going to bump into things, but look at a decent spot where you can't see too much in terms of peripheral view, so you don't get distracted, right? Likewise, when you see that you're going through a high street and you're going through a place where you're going to get distracted, yeah, the practical way to do is obviously looking down, but then squint your eyes slightly. If you try it right now, you'll see. You squint your eyes slightly. What will happen? Your peripheral view will become dark. You won't be able to see so much of a peripheral view. So what happens now? Because you can't see, you won't get distracted. Because if you don't see, your eye won't go there, and then you won't desire to see it because you don't know it's there. That's the idea. So you're looking a bit more focused, so you know where you're walking. So you squint your eyes slightly like this. So these are practical tips of how to make sure that you can follow this injunction of Allah Ta'ala. And in fact, Allah has made this ruling because Allah is obviously Allah Ta'ala. He's the one who's told us lower your gaze. So He's not going to tell us to lower the gaze when it's impractical for us to be able to do so. So the way He created our sight, amazing, right? The way He created our sight in a way whereby we have the ability to be able to focus. We have the way that the eye is made, we have the rods and we have the cones. So you can see you can focus on something, right? When you look at something, you can zoom in on it. It's like better than HD. You can look at it, right? And you can focus on that because you're focusing on that. So that's an ability that we have to see. But Allah has given us more than that, an ability to be able to see vaguely what's around your surroundings as well. But you can't focus on that. That's not your focus. So the idea here is Allah is saying when you look down, what's going to be happening? You'll be able to see around you, right? But that you're not going to be judged on that. You're going to be judged on what? The focus, where you're focusing. So Allah is saying, don't use this focused view to look at what you're not meant to look at. So this focused view, keep it down. But because the beauty of it is that Allah has allowed us to be able to see around, so we can walk still, we can carry on doing our daily activities, we can do so many things just by looking away from that person that we're not meant to look at.
Exactly.
So that's the way that Allah had made this ruling very practical.
Exactly. And what you mentioned about this focus view, again, the Qur'an is incredible, right? So the Qur'an says that قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. And this word basar is referring to that focused view, that keep your focused view down, right? Compared to another, which is more like a glance, which is like a peripheral view. And it reminds me of this other ayah where shaitan says that, oh Allah, I will come to these people, لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ. And so the ulama, they mention, he says, I'm going to come to them from in front and behind and right and left. But he doesn't mention, up above and down below. And so they say either you look up, which people will think you're a bit crazy, or you look down, right? Which is the realistic thing. And so that's what it is. Shaitan comes from everywhere. And we're not saying the women are shayateen, right? We're not saying that. But we're saying that shaitan is telling us this is how he will attack us. And so for us men especially, we should look down. And what's beautiful about our deen, and again, this kind of comes into that point about individualism versus collectivism. The deen says you should support each other. تعاونوا على البر والتقوى. Support each other upon what is good and upon good consciousness. And so we see here this very amazing example where Allah says in this ayah that, O believers, lower your gaze. O women, you also lower your gaze. And also, يغضضن من أبصارهن ويحفظن فروجهن ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا ما ظهر منها. That don't adorn yourselves. So the point here is Allah is saying, you men, you do your part towards taqwa by lowering your gaze. But you, O women, support them by not adorning and beautifying yourselves when you go out. So it's a society, Islamic society is a society which supports each other going towards Allah. Rather than this Western mentality that, I can dress how I want, it's his fault he looks at me. I can dress up in a mini skirt and wear what I want. If he looks, that's his fault. Right? That's not the mentality Islam teaches. We support each other, and this is the beauty of Islam, right?
Yeah, so these are some of the problems that we've come up with, and there are so many more. I mean, we can carry on talking for ages about this, right? Because this is a huge topic. But just to maybe list a few more, perhaps, just so that it can give food for thought for our listeners as well, and they can maybe come up with some solutions as well for some of these problems. So you have nowadays another problem in society which is plaguing our society, is that we without any verification, we spread things. We spread news, or we spread tales, or sometimes we spread a message, so that without any verifications, a message comes and we send it on.
Fake news,
right? And just to a light-hearted thing, that incident that actually I get reminded of every time I talk about this, is that once what happened was there was a message that went out going around that so-and-so person has passed away. And that message gets forwarded by everybody, right? Goes on to all the groups, and this person gets the message, and he's very much alive, and he's like, "Why, I'm passed away? Like, what's happening here?
I've been killed." Yeah.
So it's like this person's very much alive. I don't know who sent this message. What had happened actually when we traced back? People traced it back as to who had changed the message, because somebody at the beginning said that I didn't send his name. So anyway, what had happened was the person who had actually passed away, only their first name had been written, their second name hadn't been written. So this person who in the middle received the message, they thought, oh, this person's passed away. I mean, no one's written their actual second name. No one's going to know who it is. So they took the onus on them to actually insert that second name, and they carried on forwarding without realizing that this person's not passed away. They misunderstood. It was some other person. Yeah. So like this, the point is that we need to verify. And Allah Ta'ala in the Qur'an actually mentions regarding this. Yes, that you people who believe that when a person comes, obviously there Allah Ta'ala talks about a transgressor coming. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا. But obviously the fasik comes to you to give you news. Yeah, Allah Ta'ala talks about that. But the point here is فتبينوا. Yani verify that whether the news that you're going to spread to somebody else is actually true.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, because we're quickly listing these social problems, and the whole idea here is we're seeing how again and again the Qur'an in a simple ayah is providing the solution to these problems that are plaguing our societies, yeah? And what we want, inshallah, our listeners to do is think of other problems that maybe we may not have mentioned, or even problems that we have mentioned, and think about solutions at the Qur'an, and perhaps even solutions that are mentioned in the Sunnah as well. So another problem we have, and just the other day I was at the tube station and I saw this poster advert, and it was an advert for a company called Amicable, and I thought, what's this Amicable? And so I went on the website. I was just slightly intrigued, so I went on the website, and essentially what this company does, the service they provide, is that when a couple gets divorced, what is natural is that when you get divorced, there's a lot of spite, a lot of hatred, a lot of tensions that arise. And so in that difficult moment, partners are out to get each other a lot of the times. And so you might have, and this unfortunately is in the Muslim society as well, where husband and wife, they've got divorced now, and the mother, and I'm mentioning mother because this is a typical case, right? Not to malign the women, but this is typical, that the mother will say, you know what, I'm going to prevent you from seeing the children. You gave me a divorce, I'm going to punish you. And so this is what they do. And so they have this company, Amicable, and the whole idea behind it is that you amicably have a divorce. Right? So we come as mediators and help you have an amicable divorce instead of it going to court and you're fighting for each other's money and you're fighting for custody of the children and it becomes really messy. And yet the Quran has a simple solution. That Allah says, الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. That talaq is twice, مرتان. Then on the third occasion, either you now keep them, you don't give talaq, you keep them, or you release them but in an excellent manner with goodness. So Allah is teaching us that even in this difficult moment, you have to maintain your excellent conduct. And this is when people are really tested, right? So that's another one.
Yeah. And another one that comes to mind is how the parents, especially when they become older, are being sent away to these care homes. SubhanAllah. This is becoming more and more common, and people are justifying it by saying that, they'll have a carer at least. I'm at work all the time. I can't really care for them. I'm actually paying for their care as well. So they justify it in this way. But that's not what parents want at that time. Allah Ta'ala talks about this in the Qur'an, where حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ. The mother had carried this child, from one pain to another pain, difficulty upon difficulty. This is what our parents have done for us. And yet at the time when they need us, that's the time when we are sending away to care homes.
I've been thinking about this actually for some time. And for me, sending your parent to a care home is like a parent aborting a child. That's what I feel like. Because it's like, when does a parent abort a child? They feel like this child is nothing. This child is weak, completely dependent on me. Now imagine that parent aborts the child. We'll be disgusted. How dare you abort that child? So this is what you're doing to a parent by sending them to a care home. That now I have no need for them. They're completely dependent on me. Well, you know what? You're better off somewhere else. And that's why Allah is reminding you that in that moment, don't forget that when you were small, you were vulnerable, you were needy, you were dependent, your parents took care of you. They burdened all these pains to look after you. And so this is a problem in Western society that is, a big problem. And Allah is providing us the solution, the reminder that when your parents get old, they are still your responsibility. And don't think that now they're old, they have no use. No, rather the hadith tells us that if a person he gets his parents in old age and then he doesn't get Jannah, then something's wrong. Because they are an easy door to Jannah then. Because Allah is saying, look after them, and that's your door to Jannah. Right? So this is, again, our deen is giving us a simple solution. Right? Another one, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, in a holistic way, we see so many things happening. We see cheating, we see stealing, lying, bribery, so many of these kind of sins taking place, vices taking place. And just all of it is there, why? To earn a more money, to earn a sustenance, a risk, a livelihood. I want a better life. Yeah, you'll harm other people, cheat other people, defraud other people, it's fine, no problem, as long as I'm living a luxury life. So what is this? This is an absence of tawakkul on Allah. And Allah Ta'ala talks about this. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. You know, Allah Ta'ala is enough. Allah Ta'ala, if you have to do tawakkul, reliance on Allah Ta'ala, you know, have that, sufficiency that Allah, whatever Allah provides me, I'm satisfied with that.
And I think also adding on to that, the Muslim belief, and this is how Islamic belief is so powerful, right? The Muslim belief of qadr, that whatever you're going to earn in this dunya is written for you. And that even a morsel that is between your lips, if it's not destined for you, it's not going to enter, right? And that's what we believe. And so once we have that belief, we understand that, then we realize our job is not to earn lots of money, because how much you're going to earn is written. Your job, what Allah wants to see, is how do you go about earning that money? What methods do you employ? Do you resort to cheating, stealing, lying? Or do you actually make sure that even if the going gets tough, you only stick to the halal, right? And again, you see the Islamic aqidah and how that helps guide us towards the right path here as well, right? And then also right now, another problem in society, we're passing through a mental health pandemic. Right? We recently had the coronavirus pandemic. You have a mental health pandemic. People are, depressed, anxious, stressed, worried. Every other person you meet is going through great challenges. And so again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through, for example, the concept of qadr, is telling us that whatever good comes to you, don't become exultant over it. لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. That when some difficulty comes to you, you lose something. Don't go into this state of depression. No, understand there is a wisdom behind this. Understand Allah wrote this for you, and Allah wants to see your reaction. Yeah? And again, just to clarify, yes, there are some people, this is a psychological illness, and for that they should seek psychological help. But here we're just talking about, people becoming overly sad over some issues like this, right? And I mean, there's so many other things that we can discuss, but I think we'd like to end really by saying that what this episode has kind of proven to us, and inshallah to the readers, to the listeners as well, should I say, is that we need to go back to the Qur'an for all our solutions. Any problem that you see in society, we can guarantee that the solution will be in the Qur'an. If you can't find it, it's a deficiency within us, but Allah has placed the solution somewhere in there, right? And so that's what we need to understand.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, that's what we've seen. Like, every problem we've mentioned, we've covered probably the major problems. Every problem we mentioned, we've come up with a solution from the Qur'an, and that's a common thread here between all of them. And the thing that comes to mind is because why is it that the Qur'an has the solution to everything? Is because Allah Ta'ala says in the Qur'an that the Qur'an is hudal linnas. It's a guidance for mankind. So if it's a guidance for mankind, and that's what Allah sent it as, then that means it will have the solution to all our problems in society. And we believe that as Muslims. Now all we have to do is implement it. We have to go back to the Qur'anic way and implement what the Qur'an is saying in our lifestyles, in our societies, and bring the Qur'an back to life.
Definitely. And that's what we mean, that the Qur'an is a solution. And along with being a solution, it's a prevention. And that's amazing. Like when you think of a medicine, for example, a medicine is used when you become ill. But the Qur'an is such a thing where the problems that we have, the diseases that we have in society, the Qur'an is the cure. But at the same time, by basing our societies on the Qur'an, on these Qur'anic ethics, ideals, regulations, commands, then the Qur'an will be the solution for us as well. Not just a cure, but it's a solution for us to prevent further problems. And I think we should just end on this one ayah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relates to us the complaint of our Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the Qur'an. And we know he was a man who would never complain. But we're told that there's one thing he complained about. And that is, he said that إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. That indeed my people have abandoned this Qur'an. And so when we hear this complaint, the idea is what? That the Messenger is telling us that don't do this. Return back to the Qur'an. And I think if we return back to the Qur'an, then inshallah we will become a model society for the West. And the West will see that all these problems we're facing, Islam has the solution. And this will be a great form of da'wah. So inshallah we'll end on that point. Jazakallahu khairan to our audience for listening. And we'd also request the audience that if there are any modern problems that you can think of, affecting society, where you can either mention these in the comments, And also, if you can think about ayat in the Qur'an or even in the Sunnah ahadith which provide the solutions to these problems, then also mention them in the comments. We'd like to get the comment sections going, and inshallah we can have a healthy